So my avoidant partner challenges her own boundaries of being just friends. Is she really avoidant? If you have ever felt confused or frustrated by an avoidant partner's behavior, it's likely because you've experienced things like mixed signals about what their feelings and intentions might be. Could be moments of emotional closeness, but then it's followed by immediate withdrawal. Maybe there are struggles to define the nature of the relationship and then an avoidance of wanting to add labels to it. Or it may feel like there's uncertainty about how to negotiate your boundaries. Am I too much or not enough in the situation? And so as a result, we can find ourselves wondering, is my partner really avoidant? And why do they keep challenging these boundaries that we've established for being just friends? And really wanting to know, how can I navigate this situation in a way that respects my boundaries and needs as well as theirs? So if you can relate to this, just give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat so I know I'm on the right track. And we're going to tackle this topic in this segment by looking at what are boundaries in a relationship, what is emotional crowding and emotional isolation, okay, which speaks to how well the boundaries function or don't function in a relationship. And then we're going to take a look at how confused boundaries can actually create safety for certain attachment styles, such as avoidant attachment. And then I'm also going to offer a link to a free resource so you can develop your boundaries in love. So once we're able to dig into a topic like this, we're able to, and get some clarity around it, we can learn to identify our needs properly and clearly set firm but flexible boundaries around them. And that's going to help us feel less frustrated and more understood, as well as empowered and respected in our relationships. And that allows us to believe that we can cultivate secure and fulfilling relationships without this constant struggle with miscommunications, mixed signals, or emotional turmoil. So if you have a pen and paper, I invite you to grab that now because you're likely going to want to take some notes. And we will just dive in. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about, what are boundaries in a relationship? So first thing, generally speaking, boundaries are these limits and rules that we set for ourselves within a relationship that protect our well-being, our integrity, and they also assert our needs. In the context of a romantic relationship, boundaries are going to exist around things like communication, right? How much you communicate, when you communicate, how you communicate, what you're communicating about. So for example, setting a boundary around how much you're going to text or call each other. Maybe you establish that you won't text after a certain time or during work hours, that kind of thing, but you will text, a good morning and a good night message. You're also going to have boundaries around what kind of time you spend together. Are we going to dedicate, one night a week to doing our own individual hobbies and interests? And then how much time are we going to commit to spending time with friends? Then you could have boundaries around things like, what activities do you do together? What activities do you do apart? The specific activities. Physical intimacy, of course. Agreeing to what types of physical intimacy and affection are desired and comfortable. Emotional intimacy. So when and how are you going to share deeply personal information and who is privy to that information? Also, privacy and space, respecting private time or even someone's belongings, right? Not digging into somebody's diary or not trying to read someone's messages without their permission, borrowing things without asking, that kind of thing. Given that, what constitutes a clear versus a confusing boundary, especially in a romantic relationship? A confused or a fuzzy boundary might be, well, I want us to spend more time together, but I also need my space. So this is a statement that's kind of vague, and it doesn't really provide a clear guideline on what more time or more space actually means. So a clearer way of saying this might be, I need one night a week to myself for my own personal activities. Let's plan our date nights on the weekends, right? But we could also express a boundary that is too rigid or inflexible. So I never want to see you more than twice a week. It's a rule that I have, right? So this doesn't really allow for the flexibility or the consideration for the relationship to evolve, right? That there might be evolving needs and that there may be events or things in the schedule that might require some flexibility. So if you have trouble recognizing your needs around topics like this and setting boundaries around them, I do have a free resource. It's called my Boundaries Guidebook, and I'll include a link to that on the replay of this video. In essence, it includes a 10-question assessment where you can look at how good are my boundaries in relationship. And then I offer you a 5-step process to help you identify your needs and then establish boundaries around them. And that's going to help you develop what I call red and green flag statements in navigating your relationships. Okay. So given those definitions that we just explored for boundaries, it's important to realize that people are usually insecure, regardless of your attachment style, whatever insecure attachment style you have. They typically got that way because boundaries growing up were either ill-defined, unacknowledged, or severe or disrespected. So as a result, in adulthood, we struggle to name and claim and honor our boundaries for ourselves and for others. And so what happens is we wind up filling up a space and being afraid that we are too much, right? Or we're too afraid to step into the space because we don't want to fill it up and be too much. So we make ourselves really small, or we don't step into the space at all. That usually looks like we make ourselves an arm of somebody else's needs, wants, and desires, or we just decline connection altogether. And that's because we haven't really learned how to negotiate shared mental, emotional, and physical spaces. And so this leads to what I call emotional crowding or emotional isolation. So let's take a look at emotional crowding first. So when we don't have a good sense of what our personal boundaries might be, or we are easily flooded with emotion, we can sometimes equate vulnerability with a form of emotional crowding, but to the person who's crowding, it usually feels more like leakage because they struggle to control it. And so it spills out uncontrollably, usually in inappropriate situations. And that creates problems because it can leave you feeling overexposed or humiliated. It turns you into a target for criticism or judgment, and sometimes for an abusive personality. It can alienate people because they feel uncomfortable around you because you don't appear to be emotionally in charge of yourself. Or you can come across as kind of a drama addict who's trying to emotionally manipulate your partner, even if that's not at all what you're trying to do. And so to avoid this, sometimes we wind up swinging too far in the other direction, which is that second form of self-sabotage winds up being, and that is emotional isolation. Emotional isolation is when we opt to isolate ourselves because we are too afraid of things like emotional crowding. And you may reject vulnerability altogether and clam up too tightly and hide too much of yourself and not let anyone in. And so that creates a conflict because now you wind up coming across as crass, aloof, rude, or insensitive, or maybe you seem to be too intimidating and unapproachable. It can be hard for people to trust you. So it's almost like you have to work twice as hard to gain people's respect and regard. You may come across as if you've got it all together and all figured out, so no one thinks to offer you help and support when you need it. People might approach you in an overly aggressive way, even when you don't provoke them, because they think they have to hit harder in order to get a rise out of you, not realizing how sensitive you really are. And then that can leave you feeling isolated and lonely for connection with few people who are really willing to give you the benefit of the doubt. Now, both of these circumstances can ruin a relationship, and especially in combination with each other, which can lead to things like what I call the anxious avoidant trap. And we talk a lot more about the different conflict styles based on attachment style pairings in my course, The Courageous Communicator. You can also learn more about that. I have a short video on my YouTube channel called Conflict Styles in Anxious Avoidant Relationships, and we'll put a link to that in the replay. So I want to give you a little case example to illustrate this. Let's call this person Katerina. And Katerina is a 20-year-old heterosexual woman and suspected for a long time that she might be avoidant or fearful avoidant because she'd read a list of characteristics that really hit home for her, but she was struggling to attribute her behavioral patterns to her upbringing because she felt like she had a very normal childhood. Her parents provided for her financially. There were no big traumas or abuse issues like neglect. She didn't feel like she was mistreated. So she was struggling to understand how this could be popping up in her relationships. And so overall, she experienced her parents as well-meaning and loving, even if things in her life didn't seem to be going well. And if that were the case, then it must just be her fault and nobody else's. But with a little more probing, Katerina admitted that when she would be faced with emotionally difficult decisions or a situation, her father could be controlling, condescending, or dismissive. And her mother's immediate response was usually to get really upset, very loud and demonstrative, and would claim that she didn't know what to do and repeat over and over and over again, "Oh, I'm such a failure as a mother." And so then Katerina would feel guilty for burdening them with her problems, and she would be left wondering, well, am I just ungrateful? And so when Katerina needed support, she was met with a sort of over-the-top self-flagellating mother. And that forces her to abandon her own difficult feelings in order to assuage and validate her mother's feelings instead. So basically, it's like her mother's expressing, I experience your bad feelings as a criticism of me, and I find that intolerable. So I'm going to make myself feel twice as bad as you so that you have to take care of me instead, and I don't have to feel like a failure of a mother anymore. So this is emotional crowding, right? So it's when someone effectively dismisses your feelings by over-emoting and crowding yours out. And so from the perspective of the emoter, again, for them, it usually feels more like emotional leakage because it can often be unconscious and unintentional. Now, Katerina also described her father as controlling, condescending, and dismissive. And in effect, this this isolates you, right? It results in things like emotional isolation. And so this, again, is when someone throws up these kind of thick and impenetrable walls against connection or warmth, or even an invitation to co-creative solutions, because to open up means that you're going to be making yourself vulnerable to issues of weakness, inadequacy, right? Or failure of some kind, or shame. And so in her adult relationships, we've got Katerina opting for her father's way of handling things because her mother's emotional fragility really caused more stress to Katerina's nervous system. She couldn't inhabit that temperamentally. So she wound up being a bit more like her father in adulthood. But in her avoidance of being over emotional, like her mom, Katerina unconsciously and energetically tends to push really hard against the topic of big or passionate emotions. And she pushes against it with a lot of internal force. Okay. And so the harder she pushes against that, the more it becomes this powerful point of attraction within her energy body, or her vibration, let's say. And so she winds up being attracted to and attracting relationships into her life where this emotional crowding manifests. So for example, a previous partner of hers, whom I will call Tim, did something really thoughtless and disrespectful, which involved large amounts of alcohol, flirting with a high school girlfriend, and posting a suggestive picture online. And so when Katerina confronted him with this issue, he appeared dramatically apologetic. I know. Oh, I'm so awful. I feel so bad about it. It was terrible of me. How can I make it up to you? Whatever it is, I'll do it. You have every right to hate me forever. I'll understand if you want to dump me and never speak to me again. Basically, Tim is punishing himself enough so that Katerina doesn't have any space to express her feelings. He was doing all of the work for her. And so she was left holding this big bag of unexpressed anger and resentment, feeling like, well, what do I do with this? He's just going to shatter if I express how I really feel. He's beating himself up so much. I just don't want to add to the pile. And then I'm the bad guy. And then he'll leave me. So I have to kind of swallow what he's done to me to keep him close, even though I'm angry about it. And so she stuffs it down, and she feels increasingly anxious, which butts up against and creates a lot of conflict with her habit of emotional isolation. And so instead of expressing it outwardly, she turns it in on herself, and she becomes depressed and distrustful, worrying about tucking in all the corners of her angry upset, just in case Tim might bump himself on an edge and go seek solace in another woman's arms instead. And so in effect, Tim's emotional crowding forces her to emotionally isolate even more. So let me know in the chat or in the comments there if this sounds like a familiar scenario, or maybe you know someone who's experienced something like that. I would love to know if I'm on the right track here. Now, let's bring this back to the original inquiry. My avoidant partner challenges the boundaries that we have set for being just friends. Does this mean that she's really avoidant or not? So if someone is more avoidant, they have usually chosen emotional isolation as their primary coping skill. But remember, anyone who self-isolates also has trapped within them a powerful and oftentimes unconscious desire and fantasy of the perfect ideal mate that is going to swoop in and rescue them from this self-imposed isolation. And so while one part of her sets these boundaries to create a sense of safety, these more isolative boundaries, these rigid isolative boundaries to create a sense of safety, another part craves connection and closeness. And so as a result, these rigid boundaries are usually quite fragile, which is why when an avoidant partner meets you, sometimes they can slip into things like getting together too fast, or what we might call love bombing, because they think they found that ideal fantasy. So there's a lot of projection going on, right? Now, when avoidant individuals prefer relationships with fuzzy, confusing, or ill-defined boundaries, it's because that vagueness alleviates the pressure of accountability and commitment, which makes them feel trapped or cornered or crowded. So by keeping these relationships sort of ill-defined as a friendship, it can reduce the pressure and the anxiety we associate with a more clearly defined romantic relationship that comes with all these expectations, right? And it relaxes the part that emotionally isolates as a defense against that. So in this less pressured friend zone environment, this person can allow themselves to be more flirtatious, more receptive, more at ease in the inquirer's presence, toying with the connection that she might not otherwise allow herself. And maybe this is what you're interpreting as challenging the boundaries of the friendship. But from the avoidant partner's perspective, they are enjoying the boundaries of the friendship. Because once the initial safety is established, the latter part feels more comfortable in exploring the relationship's potential. But if the boundary is removed, meaning, oh, let's not be friends, let's be lovers now, or let's be partners now, because sometimes you can still have sex and be friends, right? Once we do that, the safety disappears. And those protective parts that avoid the labels, avoid the commitment, and the part that emotionally isolates is going to throw those walls right back up because it's not safe anymore. And they step back into that place of taking emotional distance. So we can see this a lot in long distance relationships. People have these daily, lengthy text message conversations going on, sometimes for weeks or months before they physically meet someone. And then they physically get in the proximity of that person, and all of a sudden the person starts pulling away. It's because you've changed the safety parameters. So yes, in this case, your friend can still be avoidant, even if they sometimes challenge the boundaries of the friendship. But I might argue from her perspective, now she's enjoying the boundaries of the friendship. Okay. So this behavior is, of course, part of a complex interplay between a partner's desire for connection and at the same time a need for safety. And so understanding it from that perspective can help us navigate relationships like this more compassionately and clearly. But really the next step for you, or if you relate to this inquirer, is to be really clear about establishing your own desires and boundaries for a relationship in general, independent of this person, right? You want to gain clarity around what is it that I really want and need in a relationship? And is this a person that is compatible with that? Because then you don't have to play the role of rescuer. Instead, you're going to attract and be attracted to an equal partner that is willing, wanting, and able to show up for you with equal effort and reciprocal generosity in a relationship. So again, if you want to learn more about how to establish your boundaries, I recommend clicking the link we're going to attach to this video. I have a free download boundaries guidebook, and it's going to walk you through a 10-step assessment that's going to help you clarify what are your boundary dynamics as they stand right now. Then it's going to walk you through a 5-step process designed to help you pinpoint and articulate your boundaries. And then we're also going to help you craft the red and green flag statements for what is acceptable in your relationships. That helps you to ensure that you are navigating these complexities with clarity and discernment around what you need and want, what's truly compatible for you. So I hope that was helpful. I would love to know in the chat or in the comments there if that is resonating or if any of that is making sense. I would love to know that.
Also, remember to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. I put out videos once a week, and I wouldn't want you to miss out.